Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the FBB179 3.5x3 US 26D hinge. Here's what it looks like. So this is a full mortise hinge from Stanley. Not a very common hinge, but just common enough where I'll keep a small smattering of this size in stock, meaning it's not the common hinge in the sense of it being 3.5 by 3.5. It's 3.5 by 3. A little smarter hinge in most applications. Many people don't think to order a hinge that is narrower than the height, and it's because of how common 4.5, 4.5, 4 by 4, 3.5, 3.5 is. But in most instances, or in many instances, maybe not most, in many instances, it's smarter to have a hinge narrower because that vertical axis of pivoting, when it's closer to the face of the door, makes for a smarter installation because that's where all the load is being carried. If you can get that closer to the door, the better. And that's where those narrower hinges come into play. And we'll talk about how to determine whether or not you need, we'll talk about how to determine what the width of the hinge needs to be for your application. So this is a 3.5 inch tall, and the height is the first dimension on this. And the width is the second dimension, so it's 3.5 by 3. This is an FBB179. In no particular order, this means that that hinge is made of steel, that it is a 5-knuckle, 2-ball bearing, full mortise. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here that they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame when they're brought parallel to each other. Steel-based hinge, and that's what that means. 3.5 by 3, and it is in a 26D or satin chrome finish. Let's talk about exactly where you're going to use this hinge. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, talking about where you're going to use this hinge is a discussion really in determining the width of the hinge that your project calls for. And we're going to talk about that. So the formula to determine how wide of a hinge you need is as follows. Door thickness minus hinge back set multiplied by 2. So take your door thickness. Let's figure it's 1 3/8. Probably going to be 1 3/8. 1.375 minus your hinge back set. Now that's the amount of the door that's not been mortised for the hinge. That's generally 1/4 inch. You're going to take those two values and you're going to double it. You're going to multiply it by 2. So 1 3/8 minus 1/4 inch is 1 1/8 times 2 is 2 1/4. To 2 1/4 you're going to add whatever your inset is. The inset is the dimension from the face of the door to the face of the frame on the pull side. If you run your hand over the face of the door and frame, the door will either be flush to the frame, not including any casing, or it'll be ever so slightly inset, most likely. It could be deeply inset, or it could be not inset at all. You have to determine that. A typical wood door and wood frame is where it's not inset. So your formula would be door thickness minus backset multiplied by 2, plus your inset. There's one more thing to talk about before we finish the formula, plus your inset. Now, inset needs to be looked at because the opening that I think of all the time is the original state capital of the state of Iowa was in Iowa City. Well, that original Capitol building is still there. The doors on the first floor are like 18-inch thick walls. The doors are installed in very thick walls because of the weight of the building above. In the mid-19th century, there wasn't structural steel to carry all the weight above that first floor, so those wall thicknesses are great. Well, these cool openings in this original state capitol building, the doors are actually centered in these 18-inch deep walls. So now in your mind's eye, think about an 18-inch piece of oak, which is what it was, and the door is centered in it. Well, your inset's going to be, 7.5 inch, or 7 3/4 inch, or 8 inch, whatever it would be, 8 1/8. That's inset. So you'll have to calculate inset. It's probably 0 if it's a wood door and a wood frame, so we'll go with that. So right now we're still at 2 1/4 in our formulation. Plus you add, or then you add, any clearance. How thick is the casing? Any trim? Is there anything that the door has to get open and then around. Let's say it's standard colonial casing and that's 1/2 inch. Okay, could be 3/4, whatever. But you have to decide what that is. Determine what's applied to the face of the frame. And by the way, the width of the hinge applies if you're going to go past 90 degree. If you're only going to 90 degree, doesn't matter really what the width of the hinge is, as long as the hinge operates properly, meaning you don't need a raised barrel hinge. Let's say your casing thickness is 1/2 inch. Well, 2 1/4 plus 1/2 is 2 3/4. You order the next commercially available size, that would be 3 inch. So why would you use a 3.5 by 3.5 when a 3.5 by 3 is a better choice? Here's your hinge. That's how that's done. I'll show you in the Stanley catalog where to find that formula. And that's what it is. So you're going to get this nice hinge, and they're priced per hinge. They're going to include a package of screws. It's going to come with all machine screws and all wood screws. Why would you need machine screws? Well, it's possible that you have a hollow metal frame. It's possible. In the early 70s, late 60s, a lot of those 20, 30, 40-story buildings all along Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, north of the Gold Coast, all the way up to Evanston. Along Lakeshore Drive, there's countless tall buildings. You get further north, don't quote me, maybe Diversey all the way up to Devon, and even further north. Lots of tall buildings. Well, maybe Devon. I happen to know that area. Original construction, hollow core wood doors that were like 7'4" or some weird height, and steel frames that those doors were hanging in. Yeah, you're going to need a square corner machine screw for that. That's where this is, and it's probably a 1024. Actually, I know that it is 1024 flat undercut head. That's the undercut head there. Under the head, that flat head has been undercut so that the screw can sit flush on a relatively thin piece of material. This hinge will also, this box, it will come with a sheet of perforated cardboard. These are shims. They're not only meant to be used as shims, but they also help insulate or isolate the hinges from each other in shipping. So you'll get that usually, not always. If you order one hinge, you may not get any shims. Although Stanley does sell those shims separately. I can tell you what that part number is. Cardboard shim. That part number is 570000. You get 100 in a pack, and we do stock those. I probably have a couple of boxes. If you are shimming fire-rated doors, which these probably wouldn't be on at all, don't use cardboard shims. You must use steel. Let's switch to the screen view, and let's look at all the supporting documentation. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Here is the hinge that we are indeed looking at. Let's take a look at some photos that we have. Here's the box, the hinge itself, another perspective of the face of the hinge. That is a image showing the swag on the hinge leaf, the bend. That's the swag. That's how a hinge is bent so as to determine what type of hinge it will be. You change that bend or that swag, you change the hinge itself. That's the backside. They do a nice job finishing the backside because you do see a little bit of that when the hinge is installed. Not every manufacturer does it as well as Stanley, that's for sure. A little close-up, nice fit and finish. I also like their logo in the sense that it's petite. I don't like excessive corporate advertising on my hardware, your screw package. You can see that little feature there. That's what's called a thread forming screw to clear the paint out of a sprayed prime coated hollow metal frame, and that's the undercut feature right there. Okay, now there is a template down below this video. Before we look at that, for medium weight doors, average frequency, template screw hole pattern. We'll talk about that, to be used on wood or hollow metal frames. They have this at 0.123 thickness. That's typical for a 3.5-inch hinge. My caliper tells me it's 0.118, so a little shy, but not egregiously so. Standard weight steel base 5-knuckle. 2 Stanley permanently lubricated non-detachable ball bearings. Template. That is a technical drawing showing where the holes are. So this is a template. We call this a template. It's literally called a template. The location of these holes happen to be what's called the template pattern. So any door and frame made to the template pattern for whatever height of the hinge you're working on, this hinge, a hinge, so long as it is a template pattern, will work. This document is nice because it will give you what they call the swag line, or the leaf length for our FBB179. There it all is. 3.5 by 3, 3.5, 5, and 6. There is no 3.5 by 4. Okay. Steel hinges in this column, non-ferrous hinges in this column, whether it be brass, bronze, or stainless steel. Okay. Now, let's take a look here at the link below this video to the manufacturer's page. This will allow you to review not only all of the Stanley products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation. There's also a link to the manufacturer's website. There's also a link to the catalog that I like to use, this 2010 catalog. It's quite old, but it has everything in it that we're going to need, that's for sure. So the first couple dozen pages are general information, really, after the index. It's a hinge 101, and whether you're an architect or a designer, a distributor, an engineer, a specifier, a end user, understanding the terminology that is used as it pertains to hinges is really a handy skill to have. The difference between half mortise, half surface, full surface, raised barrel, swing clear, slip in, anchor hinge, raised barrel. These are good terms to know. Wide throw is another one, which will apply to what, and here's a usage chart. What hinge do I need? Because I've got a 300-pound door. Here it is. Low, medium, high usage. This is what you're looking for. Okay. Now, the wide throw formula is here. Now, this isn't a wide throw hinge, but we're going to use the same formula to determine how wide of a hinge you need to have. And the formula, again, door thickness minus backset times 2. They go plus the clearance, I did it in reverse order, plus this dimension, whatever your casing is, or shutters, or brick mold, or drive-it, or stucco, or whatever's there, plus the clearance, plus the inset. But this shows what it needs to look like in terms of determining your hinge width. Determining the hinge width is something that you ought to do on every project all the time. Don't assume 3.5, 3.5. If it's not the right hinge, it will not be the best project that you could have done. The point is you want to restrict projecting hardware. Tuck that back in. One thing that happens to me all the time is I'm walking down a hallway and there's projecting hardware, whether it be a hinge or a strike plate, which you'll note is about the dimension from your shoulder down to your wrist where you might be wearing a watch. And then as you walk and your arm is arcing, I seem to crack the crown of my watch on projecting hardware. So I only buy watches that have a really tough crystal on it. So that's the point. That's what we're driving at here. Little cheat sheet formula here that we're working on. Stanley will go up to a 10-inch wide hinge. They may go to 12-inch. I know Hager does. I stock some 12-inch wide. That's a really unusual hinge. The point is in this general information part of the catalog, it's really handy to be able to look at all of this information. I could spend an entire 2-hour video just discussing everything here, and I probably will at some point. These are raised barrel hinges of the different types that there are. There's that wide throw formula yet again for a true wide throw hinge. Let's take a look at our cut sheet. It'll be in this catalog. This is a 5-knuckle hinge, and Stanley makes 2 and 3 knuckle hinges as well. They also make concealed bearing, so if you're looking to get a much cleaner look, here, consider concealed bearing first, and then either go from 5 to 3 knuckle. Those are really smart, clean looking hinges. They do, of course, impact the cost. This cut sheet, and it's linked to down below, will show you all of the different sizes in this table here that you can do. 3.5 by 3 up to 6 by 6. Okay. The leaf thickness. Non-ferrous base material, brass, bronze, or stainless steel in either a polished or a satin finish. And naturally, Stanley can do all the different types of finishes that you can really do on hardware. Your brass, your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickels, satin, polished, oil rubbed, black, prime coat. They're Stanley, so they can do basically most architectural finishes. Information that we talked about earlier, most of it. Raised barrel you can do, power transfer you can do, hospital tip if you need ligature resistant hardware. They can do hospital tip. Decorative tips like urn, acorn, steeple, ball, security studs, and NRPs can be done. Those are features that you'll have on hinges if you have exterior doors that swing out. You'll at least want an NRP, and if it's a true security scenario, you'll want to add security studs. It's a circular piece of metal that's attached to a leaf with a hole, a symmetrical hole in the other leaf, so that when the door closes, that stud fits into that hole. Even if you drove the pin out, you still can't pull the door out of the frame. That's what that's for. Okay, let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that, you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. A really smart, clean-looking hinge in the sense of it being 3.5 by 3. If I was going to be doing a project, I would certainly, me personally, I would be looking for 5-knuckle concealed bearing. So they're CB series, they're CB 1901, things of that nature. Look in their catalog for that. Stanley can do pretty much everything that you'll need in a hinge. Much of it is going to be kept in stock. This is an unusual hinge. It's not going to be kept in stock. But the common sizes for commercial applications are always going to be there. If it's not in stock, you're looking at a lead time for sure. The material is manufactured in Asia. And I will tell you that in spite of the fact that it's not a domestically manufactured product, I'm extremely partial to Stanley. And it's because their fit and finish always looks good. It always, always does. And that's not true of every other manufacturer. There are some that are, sometimes they can't get it right. And people that have been doing it for over 100 years. And Stanley's just, on average, just the best looking hinge. There are finishes that are tricky to do. Oil rub bronze. That's a tricky finish. But Stanley just does a great job with it. Plus, well, I won't really demonstrate it, but I like to hold one leaf and just wave the hinge like this. And those Stanley leaves, they flow when it's a ball bearing. Some other manufacturers, it's just, you know, you got to work it in, and they tell you, yeah, you got to hang the door, and that'll make it move. Sure. I think it should be a little smoother out of the box. You know, hinges are important. It's the backbone of the door and frame. And frankly, it's a piece of hardware that gets the least amount of consideration when it really should get the most consideration, because without it being specified correctly, the door is not going to work right. And it needs to be thought out and thought through. The height is really important. As you increase the height of the hinge, you increase the capacity by every ½ inch by about 20% of what it's capable of handling. Now, a 3.5, you know, this is obviously going to be for, well, a ball bearing. This could be for solid core 1 3/8 interior doors. I don't really recommend the use of plain bearing hinges because the cost difference isn't that much, and ball bearing hinge equipped doors just swing so much better. And it may not matter, but in 20 years, a door that's used a lot in a home will have measurable wear and tear on those knuckles when it's a plain bearing. If you're going to mix and match, if you're going to go plain bearing, at a very minimum, put ball bearing on those exterior doors. The door that will get used all the time, the door down to the basement, or the door to the garage, that kind of stuff. It'll pay off 20 years down the road, guaranteed, absolutely guaranteed. That door will start to sag, the latch bolt won't line up with the strike, and all of a sudden we're hitting the hinge with a hammer to bend it over. It's because the margin between the barrels has literally changed, where that has just sunk down a little bit, and there's micro dirty particulate that's around the barrel. It's literally ground metal that's there. So a ball bearing hinge is a great idea. Any questions on the FBB179 3.5x3 in a US 26D finish, or any other Stanley product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.